Hey guys, how's it going tonight? Today, whenever you're watching this, here we are, History 1510, with your continuing lecture. A little bit of technical difficulties uploading this previously, so I'm going to do it again. I've actually lost it, so apologies, it's coming to you a little bit late, but no classes Monday, Labor Day, alright? So speaking of our schedule, we are working our way through still the first unit, obviously, it's early in the semester. We've concluded Chapter 1, Prehistory. We're about 2/3 of the way through Chapter 2, which we will finish in this module. The next module will cover Chapter 3. What is Chapter 3's topic? Early societies in Africa, including the Bantu migration. So Egypt and the Bantu migrations. And then we will move into India and then China. Our first exam will be administered the week of September 14th through the 21st. Keep in mind, I've said this previously, but there'll be 5 essay questions, a week to complete them. Almost 1 essay question per chapter. Doesn't quite work because we have 5 chapters and 4 questions, but I'll combine a couple chapters in one of the questions. So 4 questions from the reading. You got to do the reading before the lecture, or else it won't make sense. Or do the lecture, do the reading, do the lecture. Somehow you got to layer that learning. So 4 questions from the text and lecture, 1 question from current events. I have given you links to 4 articles related to kind of current history. Somehow I will turn those 4 articles into 1 question. Okay. And of course, you may look back on those questions as you write the essay. I realize people are going to do that. I've given you a week, but please do your own work. You can't spend that week or the last hour, looking at Wikipedia and trying to cut and paste stuff. This doesn't work. Blackboard will catch you and flag it, and you'll get 0 points, plus you'll essentially lose the professor's trust. So please don't do that. Right? We also have a quiz pending, so make sure you're checking Blackboard frequently, especially in this asynchronous, right, non-real-time environment. There's now a quiz posted. I have also posted the first couple chapters as a PDF. Okay? So if you're still struggling to get the textbook, you got to get it. Okay, got to get that textbook. It is a used edition. It's fairly old as far as textbooks go. I mean, it's probably 5 or 6 years old. There's a 7th edition, which is the expensive version. You're okay driving a used car for this class. Okay, it'll get you where you want to go. Don't worry about it. Right? Also, just as educated adults now, please keep up with current events on your own. Find legitimate sources. I'm just looking at the news today. Trump faces uproar over reported remarks disparaging soldiers, saying not nice things about prisoners of war, military personnel missing in action, and those who were killed in action. He's disputing it. You can kind of make your own interpretation there. There's a lot of sources. I mean, the fact that people actually believe he did that says something about his past statements, okay? That this is even believable. So, we got the Trump and Biden show. You need to get involved, okay? So get educated by looking at a variety of good, meaning credible, believable, valid sources. Make sure you're registered to vote, and vote, okay? Come November 3rd, please vote. You can also vote for this as your favorite asynchronous class. Not sure you need to get into all of this and use the time. You can check out announcements and content on your own. I'm going to move right into the material. Previously left off with early societies in Southwest Asia. Excuse me, yes. Trying to do technology and talk is just not the easiest thing. I'll get the hang of it. Early societies in Southwest Asia, and for this lecture, the Indo-European migrations. So we looked at I'm just using the textbook, okay, the quest for order. Agricultural societies often became very populated, complicated. Knowledge becomes too valuable to lose and too complicated to remember. There's a need for the technology of writing. Okay, the first real writing we're aware of, anyway, was invented, so to speak, in southern Mesopotamia and Sumer. It basically is tax records. Okay, who brought their grain to the temple? Here's your well, they didn't actually give you a receipt, but they smushed it into wet clay, so they knew you paid your taxes. Eventually, there's going to be a whole lot of other things to learn for the few who have the wealthy men, by the way, who have the privilege of going to school. Mathematics, astronomy, engineering. Engineering, yeah, they had to bring water to their fields. They had to engineer the slope of a line to dig the canal properly. Of course, the engineers aren't going to do that, right? That's what the general population has to get up early in the morning and dig those canals at the behest of the king, right? So someone's in charge, someone digs canals, someone's an engineer, someone explains how the universe works, someone makes pottery to hold water, someone grows food, someone raises livestock. We'll see a specialization of labor. Yes, we will also see a few people who apply writing to literature. Some of the first literature, right? Epic of Gilgamesh. This handsome buff guy goes out in the world to find eternal youth and actually finds it from a Noah, right? It's kind of an Upnapishtim Noah type figure, but loses it to a snake. So you and I don't get to live forever or even stay young forever. And so that's the fates of fill your belly with good things day and night and day. Cherish the little child who holds your hand and make your wife warm in your embrace, for this is the lot of man. It's what Gilgamesh is told by one of the goddess of wine. Anyway, what else did we do previously? Just checking here. Those are the big things. I kind of left off with just a brief introduction to Israel and Phoenicia. So in this module, we're going to look very briefly and cursorily, if that's a word, in a shallow manner. We're going to look at the Hebrews. We're going to end up based here in the Eastern Mediterranean and their northern neighbors, the people of Phoenicia. These are both politically insignificant nations. They're very small, but especially that of the Hebrews will be monumentally important to the history of religion still today. Right? Not just talking about the Jewish faith, talking about monotheism in general. Right? Judaism will be the font, the roots really of course the Jewish faith, but also Christianity and Islam. Okay, so most of the believers in the world today can trace their religious lineage to these people of the Eastern Mediterranean, who actually came from Arabia before they end up there. Right, so we'll look, people of Israel. Phoenicia, look, not important religiously, but they did give us our alphabet. So you and I get to struggle with 26 characters instead of thousands. Like some other languages. So thank you, people of the phone, right? Phoenicia, a phonetic alphabet. So take a look at the map from your textbook. The Israelites, okay, or Hebrews. Hebrew is both a language and an ethnic term. Came from Arabia, and I'm going to simplify as we do in a course like this. Moved northward from Arabia. By the way, Hebrew is a Semitic language related to Arabic. So they come from Arabia. They're moving northward essentially for jobs, right? In Mesopotamia, there's jobs, there's work, there's water, okay, there's farms. Under their leader or patriarch, Abram. Now, how do we know this? We know this, well, the sources we have, which we can question as historians, are almost exclusively Hebrew sources. Okay? They're almost exclusively religious sources. So what this means is we're using the Hebrew Tanakh. We're using essentially what Christians call the Old Testament. Is that invalid? No, it's not invalid, but it wasn't written for History 1520 students. It was written to sustain the faith of believers, maybe even get people to convert to this faith. Okay? That's going to be true with all the religions we cover. We need to be very careful when looking at religious sources. It doesn't mean they're untruthful. It doesn't mean they're garbage. It just means we need to question them. And if possible, look at the context. Look at what other people said about, in this case, the Hebrews. That's tough because there's not a lot. Okay? So, what do the Hebrew sources tell us? Right? That about 1850 BCE. Right? So that would be, 3,800 years ago or so. That God makes an agreement with a human being named Abram or Abraham. Okay? And basically the agreement is Abraham and his people are only going to worship the sky god. That makes sense. If you're wandering people, pastoral nomads, right? You have livestock, when the grass is all nibbled up, you move to greener pastures, right? You're going to worship, the God that's with you. It's not going to be a mountain or a river. You're moving all the time. So the people will worship only the sky god, and in return, the sky god will have the Hebrews as a chosen people. What that means, ultimately, not necessarily the people who get the most good fortune, right? The people of this time anyway who aren't going to be blessed in any material sense, but people who will bear witness to God, God's presence and God's justice. Okay. So this is a covenant. This is an agreement. Okay? And when Abram asked God, "Who are you?" the answer supposedly is, "I am." Okay, in Hebrew, Yahweh. Like, don't ask the question, Abram. You don't need to know my name. I am your God. Right? They moved into, through Mesopotamia, into Palestine. Of course, that's not off my map. So into the Eastern Mediterranean, but a drought hits. And some of them moved into, where there were jobs the next time. That would have been Egypt, right? There's always water there. There are jobs. They wander in as undocumented workers, and they end up essentially enslaved. Or at least some of them were enslaved. Pyramids have been long constructed. There's no more major pyramid construction, but they're canal digging, granary silos, okay, to put the grain in, Temple of the Kings, so places where they're burying rulers, but not the pyramids, right? So they're enslaved, they're captive until they find, hundreds of years later, a leader among them named Moshe, we'll call him Moses, who leads them out of Egypt into freedom. And they would say back to Palestine, although I'm saying they haven't been in Palestine for like 600 years, okay? So no one's really going back. It's back to the land of their great, etc. grandparents. And they had to fight their way in. In fact, Moses doesn't make it. He had led his people through the Sinai Peninsula, which is frankly just a small piece of land, for 40 years. But during that time, these 12 tribes became a nation. They're given a code of law. Unlike Hammurabi, who gave 282 rules, this is a law code of 10 principles, okay, based upon justice. Now, Moses, this is brilliant. First of all, he says God gave me these laws, which is what Hammurabi said as well. God Shamash and Marduk. But here's the law that this is the only God, right? There are no other gods. There's only one God for the Hebrews and everyone, God of all creation. There are 10 things we have to follow. And again, this is the brilliant part, because if you're a wandering people, you can remember 10 things. It's like a built-in mnemonic device, right? You can remember 282 laws. 282, forget it, right? You got to carve those into some big black basalt rock. Here you got 10 things to remember. Okay. Moses dies before they move back into Palestine. In fact, they have to fight their way in. There are people living there. The Philistines are living there. The ancestors of the Palestinians are living there. So the Hebrews have to fight their way. And there are walled cities. It's difficult going. It's like you're fighting giants, okay, and you only have a slingshot. Okay, we get all these metaphors. But eventually they gain a foothold. They've been united under law, and they form a kingdom. A kingdom under David, really the second king, but the first one, checking my timer here, the first one who's remembered. Okay, I'm still with you. I'm just checking the time, okay. Sorry, can't afford a camera person. David's son is Solomon, who's known for his wisdom, but maybe taxed the people of the northern kingdom a bit too harshly, a bit more than the people of the south. And when he died, the people of the north seceded. Oh my God, right? Secession. They will form the kingdom of Israel, which gets wiped out by the Assyrians. Don't worry about all these little details. We talked about the Assyrians last time being very warlike people. The people of Judah, the Judeans, hold out for about another 150 years until they are conquered by the Chaldeans. Your book probably says Neo-Babylonians. I'd rather avoid that term because we're talking about Hammurabi's people. Totally different people. 1,200 years after Hammurabi's dead, okay, the Chaldeans under eventually Nebuchadnezzar. What happens there is the best and brightest, the young people of Judah are captured and brought to the capital of the Chaldean Empire and basically held hostage. Like, if your parents do anything bad over there, the land we conquered, we're going to kill their children. Well, they're there for 50 years, okay? So they actually have children of their own and really form as a religious group. Okay? Like, we do this and you do that and we're separate. So they kept their own identity, really by practicing exclusion. There were other people being held captive in Babylon. Other people had been captured. But the Judeans, we're starting to call them Jews, kept their own identity, own kind of dietary laws, and not marrying outside of the faith, things like this. Okay? In fact, historians would say much of the Tanakh was written at this time. Like, why did this happen to us? Well, it happened to us because we fell away from God's law, right? We were doing bad things. We fell away from what God wanted us to do, which essentially is to be charitable to other people. Right? So what happens next? Well, we're making a lot of history short here. The Chaldeans are conquered by the Persians. And I'm going to kind of role play this. Cyrus the Great, ruler of the Persians, goes into Babylon after conquering it. Nebuchadnezzar had not seen the handwriting on the wall saying, your kingdom is finished. And Cyrus basically goes, who are you people? Well, we're the Hebrews. Where are you from? We're from over there. What are you doing here? Well, we're held captive. All right. Well, would you like to go home? Yes, we'd love to. Cyrus, you're the greatest. Well, here's the deal, Cyrus would say. Pay your taxes and don't rebel. Pay your taxes, don't rebel, and follow my laws. So, 3 things you got to do. Other than that, I don't really care. Right? You can worship Yahweh, I don't care. You'll worship the sun like the Egyptians, it doesn't matter. Right? And he was tolerant toward other faiths. Okay? He's going to have a huge multicultural empire. He gets this whole chapter in the next unit. Right? This is Cyrus of Persia. Iran, early Iran, highly tolerant. At least most of the I'll call them now Jews, go to the home, and they haven't been there for 50 years, they've never seen it before, go back to the land of their forebears. Okay? Judah, although it's not an independent country, right? It's not part of this larger Persian Empire. The Jewish faith is developing during this time. There's a prophetic revolution, meaning God doesn't want burnt offerings, and God doesn't want sacrifices of animals, all this kind of disgusting stuff. God wants justice to flow like a mighty stream, right? God wants us to be good to other people, even non-Jews. Okay? So this becomes a key concept. Okay? We'll call ethical monotheism. That there's one God that demands ethical behavior of people, right? That we have a responsibility to be good to one another. So we'll call that social justice. You can call it charity if you want. That becomes the bedrock of the Jewish, Christian, and Muslim faiths. Okay? In the Tanakh it says it actually best, right? To whom much is given, much is expected. So you are blessed by God, thus you have a responsibility to help the less fortunate. Okay? That's pretty revolutionary, okay, on the history of religions. Okay? And it's been very influential today, not just to Jews, Christians, and Muslims, right? But I think even to people of no religious faith, okay, to help each other, right? Especially during this time of COVID pandemic, right? So, foundations of Christianity and Islam. Their neighbors to the north, the Phoenicians, I'm checking my time here, folks, hang on. Am I going to squeeze the Phoenicians in like 1.5 minutes? We'll see. The Phoenicians create a phonetic alphabet. They lived in the northeastern Mediterranean city-states. They're trade through the Mediterranean. They create an alphabet based on sound. They can't be taken around these big clay tablets like cuneiform. They're encountering other peoples with different languages. They create a language based upon phonemes or sounds. Good for us, right? Because the Greeks and the Romans, and then in Latin, this becomes the alphabet eventually. Okay? The one that essentially we have today. Right? Alphabet, not English language, but the same characters. It could be applied to languages that sound very differently. Okay? So we are going to conclude there for this part, and then I'm going to pick up with the Indo-Europeans next. Okay? So, commercial break.